For 2024, ASUS drastically redesigned their Zephyrus laptops. Everyone seemed to like the new screen, speakers, and chassis, but were a little less enthusiastic about things like the soldered RAM, the lower TGP limits, and the pricing. A few months now since release, the TGP and soldered RAM situations haven't changed obviously, but the pricing situation has. Now, I love the portable form factor of the G14. I have a 14-inch MacBook Pro, and I used to have the 6700S AMD G14, and I currently also own the 2023 model with a 4060. Comparing that 2023 model to the new 2024 though, I would take the new one every time. Video games inherently are an audio-visual medium, and the display on this laptop, just the quality and immersiveness of that OLED compared to the IPS on last year's model, to me, just totally negates any difference that there may exist in the wattages between the two. You may lose a few FPS here or there, but it's not going to suddenly make your games unplayable. Quite the opposite, this machine is actually awesome to sit down and play games on. No external display or headphones required. The G14 is also super portable. I've taken this thing on vacation, I've taken it on weekend trips, and I find myself just picking it up and using it around the house more often than I would a larger gaming laptop. That's partly because of the 14-inch form factor and also because of the power efficiency of the Ryzen CPU. It doesn't last as long unplugged as my M1 MacBook does, but it's leagues better than most other Windows laptops. The 2024 G14 with the 16 gigs of memory and the 4060 debuted for $1599 MSRP, but it's been going on sale lately for closer to $1,249. I scooped this one up open box for about $1,100. For that price, you get 1 terabyte of Gen 4 storage, a Ryzen 9 8945HS CPU with 8 cores and 16 threads, 16 gigabytes of LP GDDR5X that's soldered to the motherboard, an RTX 4060 with 8 gigabytes of VRAM running at 90 watts max TGP, a beautiful, bright, glossy 3K OLED display, and some of the best speakers that I've ever heard on a Windows laptop. That's all packed into a 14-inch CNC aluminum chassis that has a fairly premium look and feel. By all means, it's not the cheapest 4060 laptop out there that you can find, but considering the gaming experience that the package as a whole delivers, I think it's a pretty good value, especially at those sale prices. I just feel like the G14 is one of those products that when you take it as a whole package, it's greater than the sum of its parts. The screen really is the crown jewel of this laptop. The color and black levels make games and videos pop, and at around 550 nits, it gets even brighter than desktop OLED monitors like this 27-inch LG that I have. It does HDR, Dolby Vision, and has a mux switch with Advanced Optimus. If you're not professionally editing video or doing something where color accuracy is really vital, I would recommend turning on Windows Auto HDR mode, and that's going to make all of your older games and SDR videos and content have more of that pop to them. The keyboard and trackpad are both exceptional for this price segment. I think the keyboard just feels nice, it feels natural to type on, and the trackpad, it's really smooth, it's absolutely huge, and it's kind of a taller aspect ratio. I think it's matched the same as the screen itself, but either way, they both are just a treat to use, no complaints. I wanted to try something different on this one, so as soon as I got it, I basically uninstalled Armory Crate and most of the ASUS apps, and I installed the G Helper program. Everything worked great except for the RGB on the keyboard stopped working, but I don't really use that, so I didn't take the time to try to troubleshoot it really. I like how G Helper lets you undervolt and set custom performance profiles. I'll show how I have mine set up on the screen right now so you can see the settings that I'm using. I think this delivers a pretty good balance between performance and heat and noise. I swapped out the SSD for a 2 terabyte model. Really, on this chassis, the storage is about the only thing that you can reasonably upgrade. I'll put affiliate links to a few different SSD options and accessories in the video description. Those don't cost anything extra to use, but if you shop with those links, it does help out the channel and I appreciate it. Because I'm not running a stock profile or Armory Crate, I'm not going to use a bunch of time to do comparisons between this year's model and last year's model. Instead, take a look at this. This is what I'm getting in TimeSpy, running at my custom settings. And then let's jump into some games and you can see what kind of performance and temperatures and everything that I'm getting. Starting off, we have Hogwarts Legacy. This is a pretty tough to run game, and we have it set for the native resolution at DLSS quality. Then you can see we have a mix of graphics settings. And running around here in Hogsmeade, which is one of the toughest areas of the game, we do get some dips below 60 frames per second. I would say it's still pretty playable though, especially for this single player RPG type of game. But if, you can't deal with any dips below 60, there is a solution. And we can go back into the menu and turn on frame generation. And by enabling the DLSS 3 frame gen, that's going to be enough to bump us up above 60 frames per second in pretty much all scenarios. There may still be some times when there's a lot of particle effects on screen, or some areas when you're riding the broomstick where it could drop below 60, but all in all, this is a pretty good scenario. Me personally, I play with the frame gen on, but then I use Rivatuner to lock it to 60 frames per second. Next is Forza Horizon 5, and we're running this at native resolution on Ultra and with the DLAA anti-aliasing. This is one of the tougher kinds of anti-aliasing that you can run, but it does look super clean. At these settings, it does deliver a plus 60 frames per second experience. There may be occasional dips here and there, and once again, you could turn on frame generation or lower a couple settings or the resolution or any number of things to bump the frame rate up, but for a combination of playable with really nice looking graphics on this OLED screen, these settings worked out pretty well for me. Next is Red Dead Redemption 2, and we're running this on a mix of all types of different settings. I don't particularly think this has the best DLSS implementation, so I'm running this on native resolution, but with the resolution scaling set to 75%. And it delivers a really good looking, pretty crispy presentation, I would say, keeping it above 60 frames per second even here in Saint Denis and the city streets. With the way the G14 presents this, audio visually, once again I would say this is a pretty good setup if you want to play some Red Dead Redemption 2. Now we got Fortnite, and I'm running this on DLSS balanced, which kicks down the resolution to right around 50%. We got a mix of different settings going on with some epic view distance. And once we get into the gameplay, I'm playing zero build if that matters, but we're getting over 100 frames per second and it looks really nice. There are going to be a few dips here and there, but overall this is a high frame rate experience and it's nice and responsive on that snappy OLED screen. The GPU temps, as with a lot of these games, are getting a little bit high, up in the 80s, but hey, it's a laptop. Laptop's going to do what laptops do. And you could always set a frame limit or a temperature limit in G-Helper if you wanted to. I'm running these games with unlocked frame rates, but personally, when I play games, I almost always set some sort of a frame cap in Rivatuner just so the temperatures don't run away on me. This looked and played great though. A lot of times Fortnite can have some pretty noticeable dips here and there, but I thought this was pretty smooth. This is running on my custom G-Helper settings. I'm not sure if any of the Armory Crepe presets would be vastly different, but I was pretty happy with this experience here. Switching things up, we have the new Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail benchmark, and I'm running this at native resolution on the maximum settings. So there are some dips below 60 here in the benchmark, and it is an MMO, so graphics and frame rate are not necessarily the most important thing in this type of game, but if you did want a higher frame rate, you could always lower the resolution a little bit or lower some settings, but either way, this looked really nice, and I think you would be happy playing through Final Fantasy XIV on this laptop. I do like their benchmarks though. They have some pretty cool scenery and whatnot. I haven't really played through all of Final Fantasy XIV myself, but as someone who sits and watches a lot of benchmarks, these Final Fantasy XIV ones are pretty cool to look at. It's not the most demanding game, but hey, I'm a big fan of Dragon Quest, so I wanted to show off some Dragon Quest XI's here, and we're running it at 4K resolution on basically all of the highest graphics settings, except I have anti-aliasing turned down to 3 out of 6. This game's now several years old, and it came out on the Switch, so no surprise a gaming PC can run it pretty well, but this looks really gorgeous and plays smoothly, so if you are looking to play games that are a few years older like this, the G14 is going to handle them no problem. And if you like turn-based RPGs and somehow haven't played it yet, I definitely recommend checking out Dragon Quest XI's. They don't make them like this anymore. And they recently came out with a demo for Final Fantasy XVI on Steam, so I had to go ahead and give that a shot. I was a little bit skeptical on how it was going to run based off some of the feedback I've seen for the demo online. There are some hitches and cutscenes. The cutscenes are locked to 30 frames per second, and it's not perfect, but overall I thought this ran pretty well, at least for the short amount of the demo that I tried on here. And it looked pretty good. I don't know if this is really my taste based off of the combat and the just world and how everything's set up, but if you were wanting to play through Final Fantasy XVI, I think it's going to be no problem here on the G14 once it finally releases. To sum it all up, I really like the 2024 G14, and I think it's one of the best gaming laptops available on the market right now. The soldered RAM on this year's model is not ideal, but if you pick it up on a sale, I really don't think you're going to be disappointed at all when you sit down and start playing games on that OLED display. If you need a little more GPU power or 32GB of memory, there's another SKU that goes on sale. It's typically about $400 to $600 more than this model. Well, thank you for watching along. I hope this was entertaining. If it was, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, and I'll see you next time.